Welcome back to our growing experiment. We're here with Melanie de Bagira from Bare Necessities in Sudbury. So, Melanie does survival bushcraft and she's here to talk to us about that. So, Melanie, why don't you give us a little introduction of yourself and what you do?
Hi, I'm Melanie de Begira, and right now I'm kind of in my sophomore teaching experience with bushcraft and survival. Um, I have a few groups that I teach. One of which is a homeschool group where there are kids from about 7 to 12, and it's their version of Scouts. So they've engaged me to do my lessons for them in introductory. So basically the 5 C's, which are I'll explain in a bit, but that's what I've been doing lately. And I really, my goal is to get into the schools. I would really love to bring this to kids all over because I think that social media and screen time has really taken over a lot of our kids' time, and I think it can be positive, but I think there's some detrimental stuff there that happens, and I think getting outside and bringing kids back to nature would really benefit them. Yeah. So I grew up in Timmins on 80 acres. My parents, we lived kind of like that life, the prepper slash farm. We had geese, chickens, rabbits, that kind of stuff. And my dad built our own homes, log homes, that kind of stuff. I used to fly with him all up the coast of the James and the Hudson's Bay, all the way from Timmins to Greenland. And so I had a very lucky childhood. And I moved up to Toronto, or down to Toronto, uh, in my 20s. And then I got sick with cancer, moved up to Sudbury where my parents lived. And from 29 on, I got introduced to prepping from a Mormon family that I became close with. And it just snowballed from there. Once I tend to be a researcher, so I dig and dig, and when I get a passion, I just go for it. So not only did I get into the prepping, I started learning about wilderness skills more in depth than what I had as a child. More primitive, learning how to do a bow drill, friction fire, um, and I went about 13 years learning just as much as I could and practicing. And along with that, I also got um some education from the ultralight backpacking community because I have a back problem, so I can't carry a whole lot of weight. So I learned how to really trim down the weight and be able to still function with everything that I needed through them. Um, I mean, there's a lot more, but that kind of gives you a bit of a picture of. I do mushroom picking, foraging. Um, there's a whole almost like spider web of things that grow out from these, as you well know, from these skills. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what like when you how did you end up meeting that Mormon family that ended up teaching you these skills and like how when you got started, what was that like getting started and like
Okay. So the Mormon family was actually a next door neighbor of mine, and they, as part of their extracurricular activities with the church, they invited me to church, and they actually have almost like committees, or the women get together and they learn different skills. And she had invited me, and they generally they prepare for emergencies. So they always have like a prepping pantry where they have a rolling, like, I'm not saying every Mormon family does this, but it is generally advised. And they follow this where they have about 3 months worth of food in a section, a prepper pantry where they've got shelves, and they rotate through it so that it's always current food. So it's not just like they put away 3 years worth of food and forget about it. They're rotating through, and I thought that was really smart. And then she was preparing these little cook stoves where you take a tin can, wrap the I'm sure you guys have seen this, put the cardboard tightly in there, fill it with wax, and then you can use it as a cook stove for boiling water or whatever it is you will. And that piqued my interest. And I believe around the same time, I was following a gentleman called Dave Canterbury. And he is the bushcraft survival guru, basically. He was on Alone, and he has a school down in Ohio, and he was the only one who actually had a video to show me how to do friction fire, because that kind of cook thing kind of sprung me into, okay, well, what if we don't have cans? What if we don't, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into primitive stuff. So I really, really wanted to learn how to do friction fire. And it took me months because there was no instruction here back then that I knew of. And so I learned online, and he was the only one who had a video start to finish. A lot of the people at the time would do the bowing, would do the starting, and then all of a sudden you'd go to flame, and it's like there's a bit of stuff that happens in between there that's pretty technical. So he was the only one who had it start to finish, and it made it possible for me to actually accomplish it. And I walked around with a grin on my face for an entire week after I got my first ember from friction fire. Yeah, it's I'll never forget it. I actually happened to have videotaped it. It's in my Google video somewhere, but that's something that I'll never forget. And every time you do it, it's still like, oh my God, I just spun a stick and, made an ember and blew it to flame. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, like, really, that's a pretty minimalist way to go too. So I mean, like, if you need to do a bow drill, like, let's say we have to drop you off in the forest and you need to make a bow drill friction fire, what do you really need to have on you that you can't just find?
I think that really depends on your skill level. There is a way to do it with nothing. But you'd have to go find your rock and be able to nap it, as we say, so to break it in a way that you would get a hard edge. And that's your number one tool, is your cutting tool. So as I was mentioning earlier, your 5 C's are kind of your critical things that are really difficult to recreate in nature. So if I'm talking about my knife, for instance, you want something that's a full tang knife. You want it to be able to have a sharp spine so that you can, let's say you were going to find a piece of flint, which we don't really have here. We would be using quartz instead, but to be able to create a spark off your knife if you had to. But let's say we're doing bow drill. So to be able to find the rock and nap it's a skill. Like it's, that's right primitive. So your cutting tool, which is the other one of the 5 C's, is your number one tool that if you're going to go, if you have the skills, of course, and if you're going to go into the woods, your cutting tool is your number one that you want to have. Because from there, you're going to also need to make cordage. And there's many plants out there that you can actually make quite good cordage from. I happen to adore the milkweed plant because it's so versatile. It provides food, it provides cordage, it provides insulation. I have a whole talk on milkweed, but anyways, from the milkweed plant we can make cordage for the bow part of the bow drill. I've got about I'm a little obsessive, so I made 40 feet of it. Um, and those who know how to make cordage look at me and go, "You must have a lot of time on your hands." But that's exactly the point, right? Everything that you need to do primitively takes quite a bit of time. So if I'm sitting here making this cordage, it'll take me a few minutes to make, 3-4 inches. I mean, you get faster and you get better as you do it. But again, how much time do you have when you're starving, when you're freezing, those kinds of things? So ideally, the 5 things you're going to have is your blade, your cutting tool, your cordage, your container. So, the primitive way of doing a container is either burning out a bowl out of a piece of wood, or you would dig a hole, line it with leaves, put your water in there, use hot rocks to boil it so these are very difficult things to accomplish. I mean, digging a hole and putting leaves in it isn't difficult, but then you have to find hot rocks, put them in the heat, boil your water, and then you've got like kind of dirty, leafy water. It's gonna be safe, but so that's why you would want a container, and typically you want a single-walled stainless steel metal container of some sort, right? So little pot, for instance. I have all different kinds of cook kits, but a lot of people will recognize these types of pots where you have the top and the bottom, but anything like that. A metal canteen. So we have cutting tool, cordage, container, cover. So you want to be able to get out of the elements. So we have, first of all, your cover starts with your clothes. You want to be properly dressed for the circumstances. My winter kit is a lot heavier than my summer kit. Wool blankets are great because they can double as your poncho. You can use them as hammocks if you have proper cordage. You can tie them almost as tarps. Wool blankets they can hold 80% of their water and still keep you warm. 80% of their water. They can be 80% soaked and still keep you warm. So wool is a huge one for outdoors, especially in the cooler temperatures. I wear wool socks all summer long because not only is it warm, but it also keeps you clean. Right now, our wool is like merino wool is heads and tails above what I used to use as a kid, right? The itchy scratchy. So they've really come a long way. And cutting tool, container, cover, cordage. I'm under pressure, so I'm drawing a blank. Excuse me.
No, it's all
No
good.
problem.
I'm sure it'll come to you.
Cutting tool, cordage, cover, container, and combustion device. So most of us carry a ferro rod, which is not quite at hand right now, but you may have seen the they're like, people call them metal matches, ferrocerium rods, where you have a striker, and some people call them flint and steel, but it's not. It's a modern version. It's the same thing that's in your Bic lighter, but just a bigger version, and you use it to make sparks to start your fire. So that you wouldn't need if you were going to make a bow drill, because you wouldn't need the bow drill if you had your combustion device, right? So those are the 5 C's, but you would need, your cutting tool and to make primitive fire, your bow drill, cutting tool is pretty much all you would need, unless you want to bring your cordage, right? Making cordage takes time, so you want to bring paracord, bank line, pretty much anything will do if you're stuck. So your shoelace, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can pretty much, as long as you said like that knife, I mean, that must have been such a thing for people to figure out. I mean, because I imagine the first thing you're talking about has got to be basically a broken sharp rock, and then maybe you figure out attach that to a good sized stick, and now you got something that like looks like an old axe. And if you got like a good sharp one you can use in your hand and kind of work with that. But even if you got that, that's slow going, that's slow working. If you got a nice steel blade, like I imagine with you, like the blade that you had there, like you've probably went through a few and probably figured out like this is the one I like, right?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky to have the instruction of others before me, and there's really a almost like a formula for what you want as a belt knife for outdoors, right? So typically, we'll just use, this is my brand new knife. I just got it today. It was custom made by one of the Pathfinder instructors. His name is Tony Powers. So he's gotten into knife making, and just give him a little bit there. That's his insignia. I don't know if you can see it, little cat
Yeah.
of some
Oh
sort.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm really stoked because this is the first Hellcat that he created, and it's got these I don't know if you can see, but almost like reddish in the wood. It's Karelian birch. But the biggest part is that it's a full tang knife, right? The blade goes all the way through the whole knife, because you'll need to baton your wood to be able to get through it. Because if you don't have an axe, you need to be able to process wood. So batoning is essentially, if you have your piece of wood like this and you want to split it, you're going to put your piece of wood like this and then take another piece of wood and bang it through, right? And that allows you to process all different things, create a mallet so that you have something to use as a hammer, as a baton, all different ways. Typically, your knife doesn't need to be much bigger than the width of your palm. So this one's a little bit longer, but design gives it a pretty substantial point. You just want something that's not going to break. So full tang being pretty critical. And as I said earlier, a 90-degree spine. So a lot of knives will have like a rounded back. You want it sharp so that you can take away the ferrocerium rod material to be able to shower sparks onto, whatever it is you're starting.
Yeah, because you're like maximizing the friction there. If you got that rounded edge, it's going to kind of glide on there. It's not going to throw you a lot of sparks, I would imagine.
Exactly. Like most ferro rods have a little striker of some sort, and they're usually substandard. But yeah, that's why your belt knife is, good belt knife will give you what you need to get that material off.
All right. So when it comes to survival bushcraft, it sounds like the 5 C's, you really want to have a bag of that in your house in case something kind of happens. And you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
You can pretty much carry the 5 C's in your pockets. Like they make tiny little tarps. Like I mentioned a wool blanket, but oftentimes we have a 5x7 tarp that fits into, I don't know, probably fit in this container just about. So you can like literally slide it into one of your leg pockets, and then you've got your belt knife on your belt. You have your ferro rod. A lot of people attach their ferro rod to their knife sheaths, or put it in your pocket. I always have a piece of cordage in my pocket. You have all different types. I got a bunch of paracord pieces here. You can even use micro cord. It's smaller. So literally right now, that's 4 out of the 5 C's. And then really, you could use a plastic bag as a container. You don't want to, but you kind of have a modified version. So this is what I mean by everything is based on your skill level, right? Your biggest toolbox is right here. So it's such an amazing field of study, hobby, because you've got so many different levels, and there's always something to learn. Even the masters are still, learning.
Yeah, it sounds like instead of the checklist, it's really just understanding what everything gives you and then what you have at hand, right?
100%. And like I said, um, the the experts even will say, start off with stuff you have in your home, because there's all kinds of, there's a whole industry on gear in the bushcraft survival world, and it just never ending. Like all these gadgets that they say oh, you need this, you need this, you couldn't carry them all on your back. There's just so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to be judicious in your purchases. And because I don't have unlimited funds. I'm on quite a tight budget, so I've always been very careful, and I learned on basic substandard stuff. My first saw came from the dollar store for $4, and I keep buying them because they're great. I give them to people, to start off with. If they're stuck, I'll give them one of those. Now it's not folding, it's not super light, but it'll get the job done. And that's the whole thing, learning and then moving on. And then I do a lot of research on what my next purchase is. If I want to upgrade to a better knife, a better saw, a better tarp, I do a ton of research and find out where I can best put my dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds like the kind of thinking that's the skill that you would definitely take out into the bush too, right? Like you have to be maximizing what you're getting for everything you put into it. It's like the calories you're even putting into to doing what you're doing, as well as like, what do I need right now? Absolutely. And figuring out how you go about that. So we sort of started off with that situation of getting dropped in the bush. So let's say, I guess, let's get into that kind of a scenario. What happens? You're lost out in the woods. Let's say you got your 5 C's. What's the first thing you're gonna do? Let's just say I don't know, some kind of accident happened, but you're okay. You're all alone. You're in the woods. Well, how do you go about it?
This is really interesting because a lot of people expect a certain type of answer, but my typical answer, and it's a bit of a smart ass answer to this question, is get out. Get out. That's your priority. If you're truly in an emergency, is get home, right? So your calories are best spent provided you know where that walk is take the walk, get home, because things are only going to get worse. So, but yes, taking it on the level that you're talking
That's
about.
an excellent point, though. Sorry, I'm cutting you off again. Sorry, but that's an exactly excellent point. Like you kind of said, it's a smart ass answer, but that's actually really the first thing that you should think of. Because as soon as you started saying that, I'm like, actually, I'm a dumbass for not thinking. Don't think you're gonna have to live out here in the bush. Think about how the hell do I get the hell out of here? First things first, of course. So continue.
Yeah, no, it's not a dumbass answer because that's what happens when. So I've been in situations where we're walking in the bush, and I've never been truly lost. I have an excellent sense of direction. I grew up in the woods. The few times where I've been slightly turned around is if I have somebody with me and it's like, oh, look at this, and we get a little distracted. Now, if you've walked in, you can walk out. The problem is people don't take a minute to go, okay, the panic sets in, and that's when people make poor decisions. So if you do a little bit of training on basic navigation, navigating without a compass, or just understanding the lay of the land using your ears, your eyes, you can often see or hear something, because most people don't walk out into the woods quite that far that they can't maybe hear a railway or, cars or a highway or that type of stuff. If you're going out on a big hike, it may be on a trail. So those situations where, you get turned around, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, don't move. Take a break, take a breath, don't panic, think it out. Because often the solution will present itself right there if you don't take further steps to make it worse, right? And that's, you hear a lot of these survival stories where, mm, I, I, I wouldn't want to guess, but I would say 95% of the time it's user error, right? You've you haven't taken the time to plan properly. You haven't brought enough of what you need with you. You don't have the skills to find, let's say you run out of food. I mean, in the summertime, the forest is full of food. You just need to know what it is, right? So learning some basic foraging skills really goes a long way, because again, your biggest toolbox is here, and you need to keep this calm, intact, fed. Low blood sugar really messes with you. You get anxious. You get, okay, you make bad decisions. So I got off track there. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but
Yeah, no,
good words of wisdom.
no, we were talking about the things that you need to consider when you get into a situation where you might have to be thinking about survival, and you went through, like you said, you got to think, all right, how do I get out of this situation? When you're in the situation, how do I keep calm? And then you start kind of going through your priority list of how you go about it.
Yeah. So maintaining your core temperature, a lot of people think food right away. It's usually the last thing you worry about. First thing you worry about is making sure, if you're going to have to do some, we call it inconvenient camping. If you're prepared, it's inconvenient camping, really. If you're not prepared, then you're risking getting into a true survival situation. So always maintaining your core temperature, because even in the summertime at night, you can suffer from hypothermia. Um, you know, there's an expression that cotton kills, and it's a little controversial because some people will be like, well, not really, because in the summer, but if you start sweating, cotton will hold all the water, and and if you're not in a warm situation, well, it's just going to cool you off, right? So I still wear wool in the summertime. I'll bring for my overnights, I'll just bring my wool leggings, my unders, and a wool shirt, and that's what I'll sleep in if I'm using my sleeping bag, my wool blanket, or whatever it is. So, uh, yeah, shelter, it all depends on how many calories you have to put out. So almost anybody can spend just a night in the woods, really. Like, we have so many beautiful pine trees out here. It's not unreasonable to lean your back up against a pine tree and let it shelter you. Put your coat over yourself, get some rest. Do you want to spend 3-4 hours collecting sticks to make yourself essentially that? I guess it depends on the temperature. Everything is very situational, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you bring that pocket tarp, like I said, it's a few minutes deployment if you've got it prepared properly with a ridge line and some tie outs, and you practice. So a lot of people will build these 72-hour kits or bug out bags or whatever and let them sit in the basement or by the door and never use them. And one of the things you asked me was, how did I kind of get going into this and what brought me in this direction? Yeah, bug out bags were one of the first things that I did get into. And the more I learned, the more I realized that half the stuff that my friend was putting in these bags made no sense. Putting cans in a bug out bag is like you're putting rocks on your back, really. There's dehydrated, freeze dried, there's all kinds of food that weighs almost nothing, and then all you have to do is procure your water, right? And in Canada, we're very lucky that our water is quite good. So a basic filter, a life straw, a Sawyer, those are available in the States, but even filtering through a bandana is likely going to get you what you need here in Canada, barring, some less desirable water sources. But so yeah, having a little tarp ready with you solves your shelter situation. It shelters you from the wind and the rain. So we've got maintaining core temperature, water. Water is critical, you know. You need, and again, in Canada, we're really lucky. Finding water is pretty easy. After that, you might consider reaching in your pockets, see if you've got, a granola bar or having, so I always have my cook kit. I always have a soup, some dried fruit. I always put a collection of different things. I have a ton of those backpacker meals that you just add hot water to. They're the bomb, right? They're expensive, but they're awesome for like overnights, couple of days, backpacking stuff, And then you need to know, I don't know, if you're injured, you're looking for rescue. So creating signaling. So you're looking at your mirror, your color. You want a colorful bandana with you all the time so that if you can, create a flag and then make a fire, make a signal fire with, you've got your fire, but then you're putting on green stuff to create smoke, right? So if you can't get out, you're trying to get people's attention as much as possible, right?
You mentioned how a lot of people will often put a lot of stuff in their bag and not use it. And so what I'm hearing you talk is that you're using a lot of this stuff very often. Like you're practicing a lot of these skills all the time, right? So you must spend a lot of time outdoors kind of like, doing this all the time, right? Like, so it's,
an inordinate amount of time in the woods.
Oh, no, it's good. Like you're always ready, right? And then like you always know these skills, which is really the preparedness, the ideal, right? Like you're just always prepared. It actually really makes sense. It's a real privilege of our modern life that you don't have to be prepared for anything. We're as at the mercy of everything as we've ever been, probably.
I think you're really right. There is a big movement of people after 9/11, after the big power outage we had. I think it was in 2001. I can't remember. 4 days. You guys remember that?
I remember we were at a baseball tournament in Sioux Lookout and the power was out for 4 days. Stompin' Tom was supposed to come and play and it got canceled because the power was out. The Blueberry Festival of Sioux Lookout.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, and people, that wasn't too bad because people, started eating the food out of their freezer, going outside doing barbecues. I remember we had a guy with a guitar and we did okay. I mean, it was 4 days, right? But once things, and we didn't have the COVID situation yet. And now I think people are starting to see that things can go wrong and that people who are, I consider myself kind of a survivalist, bushcrafter, a little bit with the backpacking and prepping, and I think it used to be that people who would say, oh, I'm a prepper, and I have resisted that term because it kind of evokes images of guys that, make bunkers and go hide and, have their guns ready and stuff like that. But truly, all these things have a basis in reality, in situations that have happened in the world, right? We're really, really privileged in Canada and North America to, to have such lives, such privileged lives, really. Mm-hmm. But yeah, after all of these things that have happened in the last 20 or so years, people are starting to see that, being prepared is not a conspiracy thing. It's necessary,
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of friends who say, oh, if the SHTF happens, then I'll be coming to see you. I'm like, well, you better bring something to the table because we, and the whole image of, oh, I'm going to get my bug out bag and I'm going to go to the woods. I hear so many people say that and I say, okay, What are you going to do when you get there? Well, I'll hunt and I'll fish. When's the last time you had a fish on the line? When's the last time you actually shot an animal? When's the last time you processed that animal? And most people have never done it, but they expect that they're just going to go out there and do it. Hunting and trapping isn't easy. You need, 10 traps to be able to maybe catch something in the right circumstances if you've been doing it. It's, again, practicing is everything, because then you get to see what works and what doesn't. And everybody's individual as well. So there's that, because what I can live without, somebody might not be able to. So there's also that little luxury factor when you're getting your stuff together. Like my pack is, including water and food, is 25 pounds or less. Like, a lot of people will put these 60, 80-pound packs on. How far are you going to go? If you don't ruck on a daily basis like a soldier and know how far you can go, where are you going to go? You're going to be dropping those cans out of your pack so fast. You'll be dropping food along the way and stuff. So it really does pay to look for the lightest gear possible that you can work with. Because, I mean, there's people out there who do the, you've heard of the Pacific Crest Trail and the
No.
Appalachian Trail. It goes all the way from Florida to just about Canada. Like, there's people that hike this. They take a few months out of their lives, and 6 months or whatever, and they'll do the whole trail. Now, some of these people will get down to a 10-pound pack weight for that whole trip.
Oh, wow.
And their resupply will be mailed to certain points along the trail. This trail has been traveled for probably about 100 years, and I don't quote me on that. It's maybe longer, but yeah, it's pretty famous, and people do it all the time. And I had a friend the other day say, "Oh, I'd like to do that," and I said, and I'm not throwing shade at the trail or anybody goes on it, but I said, as a Canadian, you would probably be disappointed, because there's so much traffic on it, and I've heard a few stories about people, because you have to go to the bathroom, you have to, do your business, and people don't necessarily do what they're supposed to do. So there's a little bit of a factor in the woods, right? And we're not used to that as Canadians. We walk into the woods, we don't come across human waste. We don't come across, all this kind of super well-traveled path that's got areas all over where people have put their tents down, and it's just, and yes, I've seen some of the footage. It's beautiful mountains and all different stuff, but like I said, when we go to the woods in Canada, we're going where there's nobody, there's nothing except us and the animals, right? So I don't know. I may be speaking out of turn, but
No, I know
from what I gather,
like when I was growing up, when we ever went camping, it was usually we knew where a lake was somewhere, and we would just find a lake to go by and just find somewhere to throw a tent and just set up a tent. It was never like a camping ground. Like I remember, like there was a provincial park we would go to swim because it had a beautiful spring-fed lake. But like the idea of camping there always kind of felt to me like I'm like, oh, that's what city people do, Like camping is like you go out in the woods somewhere. Like granted, we wouldn't be like way out in the middle of nowhere, but you just go find a lake and you just throw up a tent. That was just what we always did. And
yep.
yeah, and like I don't know, it's kind of funny because like in a way you could think about it, you could worry all day long about what about animals and this, that, and the other thing, but like we always just kind of, I don't know, set up a tent and everything kind of just leaves you alone for the most part.
When you would go on those trips,
Of
did you
course.
ever think of those 5 C's? Like, did you always have those kind of things with you?
Yeah, we had Corona, we had coolers, we had cheese.
Most people who camp are car camping, and when you have conveyance, you get to take your luxuries, and most people are way overpacked for camping. Yeah, guilty. I used to pack my car full, and now my car is full of all different varieties of gear, but once I put my pack on, see you later, I'm I'm going to go have some fun. I hammock camp mostly, so I'm rarely on the ground, so it saves my back as well. But that's a whole nother, great topic for another type of, camping.
Well, yeah, I mean that kind of makes sense because what we would do when we were camping too is if like when we started out, most of the time we were just sleeping right on the ground on like in a sleeping bag, and then later on we had the air mattresses. That's what kind of made it real nice. Then you were just sleeping on an air mattress, and it was almost like you were sleeping over at a friend's house. It was no real different. So then the
Yeah,
hammocks, like you
for sure.
mentioned that you could use like even a wool blanket. So do you carry like a specialized hammock, or do you use like a wool blanket that you've modified, or?
No, I wouldn't want to ruin my wool blanket. That would be more of an emergency situation. If you were lucky enough to have a wool blanket, you could get off the ground if it was really damp or cold. 'Cause really the ground there's different types of ways, you can have your heat sucked from you, right? You've got conduction, which is literally laying against a cold surface and it makes you cold. You've got radiation, right? So heat radiates towards you to heat you up, or evaporation. So if you're all sweaty, it's evaporating and it's making you cold. So those are all the different ways, your heat can be sucked from you, and then that's what you've got to maintain, and you know, and that's the balance, right? How many calories are you putting out versus what you're going to get from the activity that you're doing? So, if you're just going to mindlessly decide, okay, I'm going to make a shelter and then have nothing to eat after, you're going to be pretty worn out, because it takes a good amount of energy to build a decent shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of ask you a little bit more. So I know that you mentioned that you've built a wigwam. Did you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. I've been lucky enough to have access to a property that's right here in town, but it's woods. Uh, it's the Dalron owns it, and they gave me permission. I was actually mushroom hunting on the property, um, and then when I started wanting to teach survival and bushcraft, I was looking kind of for a space, because I mean I've taught in a yoga studio, the 5 C's class. I've taught at are you familiar with Seasons
Yeah.
Pharmacy?
Yep.
So I've taught my class there at Seasons, which is a great space. But once you get past that kind of little beginner thing, you want to be able to have resources. You want to be able to teach people in situ, right? So I wanted a space to be able to kind of get away and do my projects and stuff like that. And I thought it would be really neat for almost like a mini school. So I built my wigwam. At first, I had ideas of how it would work, stick sticks in the ground and join them together. Then I did a bit of research on the traditional ways of doing it, and it opened my eyes. I learned a lot, and I built it I think I started midsummer, and because I was on a different, it wasn't my land. I only used a tarp to cover it because I couldn't justify girdling the trees that were on that property. It would have taken quite a bit to cover it in bark and whatnot. So, but the structure took me. I found a grove of poplar that were saplings, and they're too close together. So taking some of them out, because they're going to choke each other out anyways. So I was able to access quite a few perfect saplings. And I think it took me about 60 saplings to create. And it's got a 13-foot diameter. And yeah, I can send you some pictures and whatnot afterwards. But it was really a learning experience. And it's really solid. It's great. I love it.
So you said you did a bunch of research on it. So yeah, tell us about wigwams. So like, what would have been the normal application? Is this like something that you're picking up and moving? Is this more of a permanent style residence, I guess. So and who's using them and that kind of thing. So can you get into that a little bit?
For mine, or how wigwams are typically used?
So yeah, I guess how wigwams were typically used or what you found when you did your research.
Yeah. So wigwams are not transportable because of the way you create them. You actually pound a hole in the ground with a sharpened stick of the same diameter, and then you stand your poles in those holes and then join them together. See, before I did my research, I had tried a few, join them together first, and I thought I would just stand them up and then tie them together, but they kick out and they make a weird structure shape. So when you put your poles in the ground like this, they stand straight up. Then you grab them with you tie a string to the highest point so you can pull them down to bend them. And that way your walls tend to stay more vertical. So then you get more of a dome shape rather than this type of thing where it'll kick out and fall out. So, yeah, typically they were used as single family all the way up to, multiple families. So once you get past a certain size, the trees are only so tall, so you can only go so much in diameter. So what they do is they'll make them longer with a lot of arches, and you'll have a longer section, so you can have multiple families. And they put benches around the outside, and so a single dome will have typically one fire in the middle, and you'll have the hole at the top, and you can put a cover over it if you're not using the fire. And then for a longer one, you may have 2 fires or even 3. It depends on how they decided. Yeah, you'd have people sleeping on the benches. And there's different styles of them. Some of them will be summer, where they've got grass mats around the outside so that they can keep cool in real heat. And I'm not talking about in Canada, I'm talking about further south where, there's significant heat. So they'll use the exterior in grass mats. And then for colder times or colder climate, they'll cover them with, thick bark sections with much bigger, they'll girdle the entire, 8 or 10 foot section of bark and then overlap them like shingles. So it's pretty ingenious and it works pretty well.
So what have you been doing with your wigwam?
I'm sorry?
What have you been doing with your wigwam?
Me, I use it. I've slept in it. I actually put a wood stove in it. I have, they're kind of like a portable wood stove, like for a hot tent. So it's only a barrel about maybe 16 inches diameter at best. Yeah, something like that. And then it's got little legs and a really tall chimney. So I created a little stove jack so that I could put the chimney out the wigwam. And I slept in it January 4th this year. So, and it was quite comfortable. I mean, I made a bunch of grass mats as well. So I was able to have that, the protection from the conduction from the ground. But since my wigwam was up and it had been covered with snow, it was quite well insulated. So I didn't have too much trouble with the cold. And then I've had 8 kids and 3 moms in it sitting for a lesson. I have a big stump in the middle where I use for doing different projects with wood or knives, or back in, I believe it was March, we did maple syrup. So I did a lesson on making maple syrup every year. Well, this is my third year. I've been making maple syrup small scale. I only get 2 or 3 liters, but it's a fun project. It's a true labor of love. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that education aspect of what you're doing now and what you kind of hope to do with it?
Yeah, that's my real goal. I've been teaching classes kind of sporadically. I'd love to be able to um, take small groups out on outings and adventures. The only thing is, I learned a little bit of a lesson about a year or so ago where I realized that I have to ensure um, that I'm comfortable with everybody's skill level, right? So, um, yeah, I don't want to put anybody or myself at risk. So I want to, make sure that the skills are there and that I'm comfortable with everybody's, not to mention not everybody has kit, right? So I try and encourage people just to get basic stuff, even from around your house and put together your kit so that you can come out and have a good time and be comfortable. Like you don't want to put people in a situation like they do on a loan. That's not reasonable. You have to get there, right? Um, what was the other part you asked?
I think a little bit about what you hope to do with the education. I know that you mentioned you're doing some education with some homeschool kids and that you kind of want to get into the school. So do you want to touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's dear to my heart. That's what I'd really love to do, is to get into the schools. I have a few contacts that have mentioned it, but I think it'll require dealing with maybe bureaucracy. I don't know, because in this day and age, handling, teaching kids how to handle knives, a lot of people will go, oh no, you can't, I'm like, my son was 4 years old, and, I had a knife that was very similar to this one, and I taught him how to use it, and he followed the rules or he didn't get to use it. And it was always clearly right in front of me. So it was, Mom, can I use your knife? I would hand it to him properly, and he would use it right in front of me, making sure all his, safety protocols were being used. And then, he would hand it back to me properly. And if he didn't, then he didn't get to use it, for a bit. So those were the rules. And a lot of kids to get those, adult things that are kind of a little bit neat or different, they tend to follow the rules because they want to be able to do it. So I think it's a matter of reassuring parents as well that I have their kids' safety in mind. And so far, I've been very lucky. Like I said, my homeschool group, these kids tend to be a little bit more capable. They're doing things all the time at home. They're given a little bit more, I don't know, practical skills, maybe. I'm not sure how to say that. I don't want to offend anybody who isn't, but yeah. So getting around, knives and fire, but it's doable. So I'd love to get into the schools, even the college. There's so much need for having kids out in the woods, in nature. It's good for the soul. Yeah, it's good for anxiety.
Yeah, no, and that kind of brings it all kind of around in a nice circle. So I'd like to say thanks for talking to us. I feel like we learned a lot, and it was great to know what you're doing and stuff like that. So if anyone wanted to get in contact with you and learn some of your skills, or maybe follow on your page or anything like that, how would they get in contact with you?
I do have a Facebook page. It's called Bare Necessities. My biggest struggle is an online presence. So if anybody is a student and they want credits or anything like that to be able to help me with an online presence, I'm in desperate need of it because I don't want to be online. I want to be out in the woods. Um, it's I find it a little bit frustrating to manage because you have so many things you have to access, like Instagram and YouTube and all these things, and I'm almost fighting against that. But to be in business in this world, you need an online presence. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, but yeah, Bare Necessities is what I have, or they can just reach out to me on my Facebook through Messenger or just on Facebook, Melanie de Bagheera, and that's DeBagheera. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I've kind of like bounced around all over. I wish there was a little bit of a cleaner picture, but that's not necessarily what this life is about, right?
Well, it was really interesting, and I feel like there's probably more that you have to offer too. So, I mean, there's not saying we can't have another interview in the future, or maybe you want to do a deep dive on a specific topic, and we can really kind of get into the finer details on some survival skills in particular.
Sure, and it also helps me become a better teacher as well.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you, and take care.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.